The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden. And Brian, I know you're sleepy today, but I say a hearty Excelsior to you.
A hearty Excelsior to you too, my friend. I do want to apologize to the listeners if I sound sleepy or if I sound a little bit hoarse. I've been basically every weekend this summer has been involved in an appearance at a different convention, and I just did another one, and I'm worn out, folks. I'm exhausted.
Well, I think it's time for you to have a rest.
And I think it is too.
Just talk about 1970s and 80s Marvel Comics.
Absolutely. Specifically this week, the Champions, issues 9 and 10, the Battle of Los Angeles, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to talking about these couple of issues. I thought they were really fun, but I'm especially looking forward to next week's episode where we can geek out about even more obscure characters.
That's right, including Black Goliath.
Correct.
Now, as we've already talked about on last week's episode, when we wrap up the Champions, we are going to focus on Black Goliath next. He has a criminally short run in Marvel Comics history. We can probably do that in 1 or 2 episodes.
Yes, 2 episodes probably, yeah.
Right. And then, for those who follow us on Twitter, I started a poll last week. What should we cover after Black Goliath? Right now, overwhelmingly, people have voted for Man-Thing.
I saw that.
Now, there will be a second poll, and we'll get a winner off that, and then Man-Thing will face up against whoever wins that poll, and we'll determine
who's next.
Right.
Well, I do have my complete Man-Thing here. As you know, I've only read a few scattered issues. So whether we do that after Black Goliath or after that, I'm looking forward to reading them.
Exactly. I am too. And I'm excited because as part of this Champions coverage, we will be diverting in for at least one issue into one of my favorite Bronze Age Marvel titles, and that is Supervillain Team Up.
Yeah, and you know what? Supervillain Team Up, when we get there, we'll talk about it at greater length, because Supervillain Team Up is actually responsible for a lot of the stuff that I became passionate about later.
Nice.
And I'm a huge fan of Supervillain Team Up, and I do have that complete collection here as well. And one of the things I want to say about it, we'll talk more about it later, is Marvel has a number of characters in their arsenal that I don't think have ever really gotten their due or been exploited to the level of greatness that they could be. And primary among those characters, Brian, and I know you will agree with me, is the Shroud.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The Shroud is a great fucking character. And in fact, I think we should do at least that run of Supervillain Team Up.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, in the interest of the show, obviously I've spoiled it for you folks. It has ties to the Champions, but it also has major ties to the Defenders. Namor is one of the main characters in Supervillain Team Up. So yeah, I think maybe we'll pit that up against Man Thing, and we'll let the audience decide which one we should talk about first.
Or at least put Supervillain Team Up in the next survey.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see here. Champions number 9 is written again by Bill Mantlo, drawn by Bob Hall, inked by legendary Iron Man artist Bob Layton.
That's right.
And it is, as you said, Brian, the Battle of Los Angeles, and I believe it is your job to read that first balloon from Hercules.
By Zeus, son of Cronus, we are attacked. Now, for those of you who don't remember from last week, it's currently just Hercules and Iceman. Hercules and Angel. Iceman is off with Ivan. They're searching for Black Widow, who's been kidnapped. Ghost Rider is taking Rampage to the hospital, and it's Hercules and Angel facing down the Titanium Man, the Crimson Dynamo, and the Griffin, all seen last issue.
And again, you know what I want to point out about this story arc and these 2 issues that we're going to talk about in today's episode is that this storyline is not really about the champions at all. I love the fact that the champions are really supporting characters are in their own book, and it's really about Ivan Petrovich and his son and the Black Widow and sort of all of those characters. And I also have to say that the Champions was the kind of book that Marvel was publishing in this era where you could get away with that.
Exactly. In when we covered the Defenders, we've compared Ivan to Jack Norris from the pages of the Defenders, who was Valkyrie's husband, estranged husband. Gerber tried. There were moments when Gerber tried to do this with Ivan, or with Jack Norris. He didn't quite get away with it. The Defenders always had to get involved. But you're right. Here, the Champions have taken a back seat. This is now Ivan's story.
Right.
And I think that's very cool.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. It's great. So we turn the page and we see, some great artwork from Hall and Layton. It just looks fantastic, I think, with the Titanium Man and the Griffin and Crimson Dynamo attacking Angel and Hercules. We don't need to go into, too much detail here.
A superhero fight breaks out.
Yes, a superhero fight breaks out. The Prince of Power wields his mace of mayhem, or whatever the hell he calls it. Angel sort of tries to take control of the crowd. We see Angel versus the Griffin. We see Governor Jerry Brown of California being spirited away. And I think on a couple pages later, we have a moment between Crimson Dynamo. Oh, actually, before that.
We need to talk about Dick now.
Yes. I knew you were going to get there.
Now, if you're behind in your listening or you're behind in your reading, Dick Fenster used to be in charge of the university. And then he got fired, and Angel hired him to basically be the guy for the Champions. He's their public relations guy. He's the guy behind the scenes, the guy in the chair, so to speak. Crimson Dynamo comes charging the stage, and Hercules says, "Stand thee behind me, Dick Fenster," and gets into it with Crimson Dynamo. But then Dick jumps into the fray. He says, "I may only be Dick Fenster, boy public relations man, but here's where I show that even an ad man can carry some clout." And he picks up a folding chair and he says, "Heads up, you walking sardine can. It's Fenster to the attack," and breaks the chair over Crimson Dynamo's head.
Yeah, without any effect whatsoever, of course, because Crimson Dynamo is in armor. But I was reading this, and all I could think is that I'm willing to bet that if I read through the entire Brian Keene library, that somewhere you have used "you walking sardine can."
Absolutely, I have.
There you go. See, I knew that because that is a repeat that shows up in a lot of Marvel fight scenes.
Yep.
And I read that and I thought that's one that stuck in young Brian's head for sure.
I absolutely acknowledge it. I didn't realize it until now, but you're absolutely right.
There you go. Then we cut to Johnny Blaze, who happens to be riding in. He's left Rampage at the doctor at the hospital, and he's riding back only to come right in the middle of the battle. And he's facing off against the Griffin. But the problem is there's a crowd, Brian, and the crowd sees Johnny Blaze. And when you see the Ghost Rider with his head a flaming skull, it's not soothing.
No.
You're not going to calm the crowd. You're only going to make them run in greater terror than they were running before.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. So Ghost Rider and Griffin kind of make it back to the main fight where Crimson Dynamo and Hercules are going at it.
When we get a moment worthy of the X-Men here.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
So, seeing the Griffin coming, and the Griffin's about to attack Ghost Rider and try to kill him, Hercules says, "No, do it, Brian. It shall not be." And he throws his mace at the Crimson Dynamo, purposefully deflecting it off of the armor of the Crimson Dynamo into the air with such force that Ghost Rider is able to grab the mace as it flies by, dragging him up into the air away from the crowd so they're not in danger, where he can blast the Griffin with his Hellfire or Soulfire. And then he lands, touchdown, safe and sound, away from the mob. And then he throws it at the Griffin. He says, and I love this. Now let's see if I can repay that favor Thor style. So Hercules has just saved him with this mace and helped him fight the Griffin. But it's not Hercules style. It's Thor style.
That's right.
Even in his own book, Hercules gets no fucking respect.
But meanwhile, what about Warren? What about the Angel? He's facing off against Titanium Man. They're engaged in some aerial acrobatics. And Warren kicks Titanium Man, and Titanium Man panics. He says, "No, you are upsetting my center of balance. My own boot jets are driving me earthwards." Obviously, his suit was not designed by Tony Stark.
Clearly not. It's clunky, if not worse. And Johnny Blaze thinks this is a fine turn of events, except that Titanium Man is hurtling not just towards Earth, but toward Hercules.
And he then plows into Hercules, driving them both into the ground. So 2 pages back to back in his own book, Hercules is getting dissed.
Yes, exactly. Johnny Blaze turning around allows the Griffin to attack him from behind. He claws him badly enough that he turns back into Johnny Blaze. And then all of a sudden, Crimson Dynamo takes down the Angel. And guess what? The champions have been defeated.
That's right.
This is not a good turn of events.
Not a good turn. And Crimson Dynamo reminds us that this isn't even about the champions. It's all about Ivan Petrovich, who is now unguarded, or so he thinks.
And we cut away to Rooftop, where Ivan and Iceman are using the tracking device that Ivan cobbled together to locate the Black Pearl carried by the Commissar, who is the guy who trained the Black Widow, at least in this era of Marvel Comics. And they find him. There you go. And we have a momentary flashback, Brian, to remind us of the history. Iceman says, "Slow down, Ivan. Think this out." And Ivan says, "Think, with Natasha in danger." And then we get this moment.
That's right. Ivan reminds him that, Black Widow has been a partner with Daredevil. She's been a partner with Hawkeye. But through it all, Ivan was always there with her. He always had her back, and she had his. They've never run out on each other.
There you go. He thought the Iceman wanted him to to run away, but Iceman says, "No, I just don't want you to be stupid in the way you go about this." Iceman forms an ice tunnel bridge from rooftop to rooftop, and they're about to do that. But unfortunately, before they can sneak in to try to rescue Ivan and the Black Widow, the Soviet, what are they called here? The bad guys.
Yeah, they're not calling them the Soviet super soldiers. I think this is probably before that. It's just Crimson Dynamo and
Griffin and the Titanium Man return with the champions. There's another little fight. Ivan goes down into the ice tunnel. Meanwhile,
and it's important to point out at this point, all the superheroes, all of them, are incapacitated.
Correct.
The only member of the champions who can do anything at this point is Ivan, who has no superpowers.
Exactly.
Only a gun and his wit.
Exactly. And a fucking great mustache. You know? I mean, if I could grow a mustache that would look like Ivan's, I would shave my beard.
Yeah.
You know, but I just can't.
I can grow a mustache that looks like Ivan's. Is that a challenge?
For you, if you could have just a mustache and it didn't make you look like you were trying out for a middle-aged guy porn, I would like to see that.
You're talking the big handlebar, waxed and all that. I can do that.
Yeah. Something. Yeah. You know.
I can do it. I don't know that Mary Sangiovanni will stay with me if I do that, but I can do it.
Well, maybe Mary could get one of those like clip-on ones, so you guys could match.
Yeah, there we go.
That'd be a good picture. You could go as Ivan and the Black Widow for Halloween.
She's glaring at me right now, Chris.
Is that because she doesn't want to wear the Black Widow costume, or because she doesn't want you to have that mustache?
I think it's because she came in mid-conversation. Chris thinks you should dress up as Black Widow for Halloween, dear, and I'm not seeing any problem with this. All right. So anyway, speaking of the Black Widow, we transition to her, and I can't remember his name, but he's the guy that trained both her and Ivan. Yep. They're still captive, and Darkstar has brought them dinner.
And Darkstar is again expressing some apology. She doesn't like the fact that she's doing this to the Black Widow. But neither does the Black Widow. So that Darkstar turns on the light only to discover that the Black Widow is hanging from the ceiling. And there's a fight. And Alexei, which is the first name of the commissar, and we'll see his last name again.
Bruskin.
Alexei.
I googled it while we were talking.
There you go. Is blasted by the dark force of Darkstar, and then the Widow with her Widow's bite and Darkstar are having a fight. And as that's happening, we see a shadow falling toward the skylight overhead.
And it's Ivan. He smashes through the skylight in true action hero fashion. He fires his tranquilizer bullets at Darkstar. And we find out that Bruskin also trained Darkstar. So he's trained every one of the people in this room.
You know, again, you could do... I feel like I don't remember, honestly. This is the thing where you've been doing this as long as we have, and there are certain things you forget. Years ago, I wrote a number of Marvel tie-in novels, including the very first X-Men novels, and subsequently I did one called Codename Wolverine. And in Codename Wolverine, I did a story set during the Soviet Soviet era, behind the Iron Curtain, and it involved Black Widow and Wolverine and Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, when he was an agent of Interpol,
right,
and Nick Fury and other characters who would have been active at this time. And I can't remember if I included Ivan, but if I didn't, I am ashamed of myself, because I would totally read a story about Ivan and Nick Fury and in their spy days, you know.
I agree. I want to pitch a miniseries that's Ivan and Jack Norris and Aunt May and all the other, background characters having their own adventure.
What about the dog, Beast Dog from Defenders?
Sassafras?
Sassafras, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hulk's pet deer, Bambi. We can do the whole thing.
All right, anyway.
But anyway, yeah, Ivan, He manages to take down Darkstar, and Crimson Dynamo and the other villains arrive with the still incapacitated champions, at which point Crimson Dynamo reveals to Ivan what we, the readers, already know, that he is, in fact, Yuri Petrovich, Ivan's son.
Dun, dun, dun. Which leads us to the title of the next issue, Champions number 10, which is called One Man's Son is Another Man's Poison, which is
That's right.
Really bad title.
Same creative team, Bill Mantlo and Bob Hall. And man, I got to tell you, I'm loving Bob Hall's art on this book.
Me too. We have inks by Frank Giacoia. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. On this issue. And yeah, this issue is fascinating to me. Although I will also mention the cover is fantastic because it's Hercules fighting the Ghost Rider. And look, Brian, this cover is the reason we do this show.
Yeah, that's a Dave Cockrum cover. Anyone who's a fan of the X-Men will recognize that right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. This cover is the quintessential 70s Marvel cover.
Yeah. It's this idea of like, it doesn't matter how strange a combination the characters are. And for me and for us doing this show, the whole point of it is when you can take the characters who don't make any sense to have together and have a cover like this, that's a sale for me. You can ring that comic up right now because I want to see that.
That's right. Yep. If this was what, 1976, around something there,
like that, yeah.
77. If 8-year-old Brian had seen this on the newsstand, it would have been bought. No questions. No second thoughts. And at the time, I wouldn't have known who any of these characters were.
Yeah.
But I would have snagged it.
Yeah. Anyway, so we begin where we left off with a splash page showing Darkstar, Titanium Man, and Crimson Dynamo. The Griffin is absent for this. And the champions, at least the 4 male champions, are groggy on the floor, starting to recover. And they find themselves, Brian, in a metal box. And this is some weird stuff because these are powers I did not know Darkstar had.
Yeah, I got to tell you, as a reader, now, as I said on last week's show, I'm familiar with Darkstar because of her appearances in The Hulk, also written by Bill Mantlo. But there, I had a clear sense of what her powers are. But so far here in the Champions, her power set seems to be very different, and I don't have a clear handle on what all she can do and can't do.
Well, it sort of reminds me of Damon Hellstrom's Nether Trident. Like it can. Damon Hellstrom could do things that were convenient for him to be able to do, and I feel like Darkstar is that same character here.
Right.
Basically, to sum up what's going on here, Darkstar has placed the 4 male champions inside a metal box that is in the core of the San Andreas Fault. The only way for them to get out is basically for Hercules to smash their way out. But if he does that, according to this comic, he will create an earthquake along the San Andreas Fault, and all of, like half of California will fall into the ocean. Now, that's not as dumb as the issue of, I think, Marvel Team Up when Hercules tows the entire island of Manhattan. That really happened in Marvel continuity, friends. Check it out.
Yes, it did. It did.
But it's kind of, anyway. But it serves the purpose of sidelining the boys.
And it leads to that scene on the cover because Hercules has had enough of this bullshit.
Right. Yes.
He's, Angel's telling him to calm down, and he says, "Thou speakest to Hercules, winged one, whom even Zeus once feared, but Hercules will not be shackled." And Ghost Rider is having none of Hercules' nonsense. He says, "You will be shackled if it means my hometown's at stake, muscles."
Yeah, exactly.
And he blasts him with hellfire.
Yeah. And then Hercules it turns out, reveals that he never trusted Ghost Rider.
Yep.
He doesn't like the fact that he seems to be a creature of hell. So he doesn't trust him. So that battle's going on. Darkstar can actually see them fighting through some kind of scrying pool created by her dark energy. And so basically, just to sum up, Darkstar's ability here that she's showing is some kind of trans-spatial thing where she can use her dark energy to shift people from one place to another.
Right.
But I guess you'd say it's similar to the inside of Cloak's cape.
Yeah, very similar to Cloak's cape or the Spider-Man villain Spot. Yeah. Now, one thing I would like to comment on very quickly, we talked the last few episodes about all the politics in this book, the 1970s politics. We have that again here. And once again, it seems like it's something from the 70s that could be torn out of the comic and transposed now and be just as accurate and just as timely. Titanium Man says, while they're watching the champions argue, he says, "Is it not revealing to see how the capitalists turn on each other in a moment?" And Crimson Dynamo says, "You are a fool to see everything in terms of a class struggle. There were no politics in my desire for revenge." I kind of want that as my header on Twitter. Just that panel.
I think you should do that.
I think I might.
Anyway, then we get my favorite part of this issue, which what we have is the Darkstar, Crimson Dynamo, Griffin, and Titanium Man on board this plane or whatever it is, VTOL ship, and Black Widow and the Commissar are shackled, and Ivan is being sort of manhandled by his son, the Crimson Dynamo. And we get this argument. And basically, to sum up, Yuri Petrovich has been told one thing about the death of his mother and who his father is and what his father did to him. But in typical espionage fashion, in the world of spies, Yuri Petrovich does not know the truth, and neither does Ivan. So
that's right.
What we get is the story that Yuri knows. Right?
That's right.
19 years ago, when Yuri was 5 years old, let's see here. Basically, the days of the revolution are past. Ivan walks in with his family, his family's there. He's being threatened. He's being offered money as a scientist and master technician. People who are, who appear to be American spies.
Right. They're telling him, the West needs you. And he says, "No, I froze in the snows outside Leningrad fighting Hitler to save this land. Russia is my home, my country. If there is wrong in it, it must be changed, not destroyed." And, they've been offering him a fat stack of money, and he throws it in their face.
And then we see that later, when they're sort of leaving, they're going to stay in the mountains. Ivan's worried about his family's safety, almost like a Russian Punisher, Brian. His car is attacked in this case, and he's fired upon by these spies that he refused to work for. His mother is killed, and these supposed American agents take Yuri away. He's 5 years old, and they take him away. And as far as Yuri knows, Ivan just forgot about him at that point.
Right.
The widow is furious that Yuri would believe this. But now we see the Commissar knows something nobody else does. Alexei Bruskin, or whatever his name is. What is it? Is that noise your stomach?
No, I have the window open. It was a motorcycle going past in the background.
Was it Johnny Blaze arriving?
It was
as
the
our
Ghost
special
Rider.
guest on Defenders Dialogue. Anyway, so there you go. Then we find out that they're being pursued by the American Air Force.
That's right. And they go out, and Crimson Dynamo orders them to stop the planes. But Titanium Man, he has, he toes the party line, so to speak. He goes out and destroys the planes.
And while this is happening, we get more of Yuri's story. As far as Yuri knows, while these American agents were training him and educating him, brainwashing him to work against the Soviet Union, he created a homemade radio and was able to get in touch with people who he believed he was in West Berlin, and he was able to get Soviet agents in East Berlin to come and rescue him, to take him away. And he was furious to learn that his father had defected to the United States. His father was a traitor as far as he was concerned. But all of this, Brian, was an incredibly convoluted plan. An incredibly convoluted way to influence the mind of one child for a purpose I'm still not quite sure of, because they were never Americans at all, Brian.
That's right. It was his own people who had kidnapped him, and it was set up by the commissar himself, Mr. Bruskin, all for the glory of the state. And when Ivan hears about this, he is enraged. Black Widow looks anguished. Darkstar looks shocked. Ivan is enraged. Some very spectacular line work there in the art.
Yeah, and we should let folks know that while the real truth is being unveiled, Yuri, aka the Crimson Dynamo, is outside fighting the American airplanes.
That's right.
So he does not hear the truth at this point. So when he comes back in, the Black Widow and Darkstar are trying to explain to him what really happened, trying to tell him the truth.
And he's not having it.
Nope. So he won't listen. So Darkstar actually turns on her team and teams up with the champions.
That's right. Meanwhile, in that steel box inside the San Andreas vault, because as Darkstar sends a bolt of dark energy flying from the ship, and it's heading towards that box where Hercules and Ghost Rider are still fighting. The energy hits the box and transports them back outside.
Yes. So they are now above ground, but not up inside the plane, where it would seem they would be more useful. But in any case, there's some arguing. Also, it seems that Darkstar's energy has planted some kind of psychic suggestion in Bobby Drake.
Yeah,
which is an element of power I really don't understand.
My only two quibbles. I'm enjoying this reread, but I do have quibbles with how Ivan's dialogue is written at times.
Yep.
And the extent of Darkstar's powers.
Well, I have to say, clearly the Darkstar transportation mode is part of the plot, but I have a feeling that there's something that was cut or something that was forgotten at this point, and that this dialogue is making up for that. Because they're arguing, and Angel says, "Later, Blaze, now we've got to," and Iceman interrupts him and says, "Make it to the airbase about a mile from here, commandeer a plane, and head coastward." And Angel says, "Huh?" And Iceman says, "Don't ask me, Ward. It just popped into my head like the old days when Professor X would contact us telepathically."
That's right.
And that's never mentioned again. And then the next time we see them, they're on their commandeered Air Force jet. And so all I could think is that there was something that was skipped or forgotten, and that the great Bill Mantlo went, "Huh." Or the editor went, "How did they get the plane?" And Mantlo said, "That's not a problem. I'll just add this balloon on this page." Because it's definitely not a thing. At least as far as I can tell. We'll see if it gets picked up on future issues.
Agreed. We then transition back to the plane, and I love this. Black Widow taking on Crimson Dynamo, Titanium Man and the Griffin all by herself and cleaning their fucking clocks. But in the process, she actually shoots out the master control, and the plane is now going into a dive.
Yeah, nearby, by the way, going into a dive nearby the Soviet submarine that is now surfaced inside U.S. territorial waters to meet them.
Yep. They're 3 miles inside U.S. territorial waters.
And all I could think about when I saw that was the Steven Spielberg classic 1941 with Slim Pickens and John Belushi.
Then the other champions arrive on their plane, and they start shooting at the submarine. Then they all just abandon the plane.
Well, and I want to say, I like this callback because they abandon the plane and Hercules has no method of flying, no parachute, no nothing. And Iceman says, Hercules, you sure you know what you're doing? And Hercules says, aye, lad, Hercules is sure. Last issue, we saw the Titanium Man fall from the sky and land on Hercules. And that's what Hercules is returning the favor quite purposefully. But I love the fact there's no reference to it. You have to have just read the previous issue in order to appreciate the payback here.
Yep. So, another super fight breaks out, but the non-superpowered people are getting involved. The Commissar, grabs a weapon and shoots at Crimson Dynamo and gets blasted for his efforts, at which point Darkstar completely turns on Crimson Dynamo.
Yeah, Darkstar has definitely switched sides at this point. The Commissar is trying to be heroic. He grabs a hand grenade and is going to throw it into the submarine. The captain of the submarine shoots him in the back, and he's dying. The inside of the submarine explodes. Hercules saves the Titanium Man's life because the Titanium Man otherwise would be sinking to the bottom of the ocean. But the champions then make short work of the rest of them. And Darkstar is holding Crimson Dynamo with her power.
And then we get one more. We get one more twist reveal in this scene. She tells Ivan, "Comrade, you must decide what I should do with him. I am his lover."
Yep. She doesn't want to be the one to decide whether to kill him or not.
Yeah, and Ivan's weeping. He says, "You're going to have to decide, kid. I don't even know him. It's been too many years."
Right.
I got to tell you, I feel for Ivan in this scene. I know it's
apologies for
70s that. That's okay. Was that your stomach?
Yes, it was my stomach. Yeah.
I know it's 70s Marvel melodrama, but it's a beautifully written scene, man.
Yeah, no,
it really
great.
Is.
Yeah, it's great. Ivan doesn't want to make that decision, and he basically forces her to do it. So she lets the Crimson Dynamo go, and we see Johnny Blaze, or actually Angel, is saying basically, "What the hell did you guys do? Why did you let him get away?"
And Black Widow tells him,
yeah,
she's like, there's another side to this battle which only Ivan and I know about. Maybe we'll tell you someday.
Right. Yep. And Darkstar says, "I thank you, Madam Natasha. I hope I will prove worthy of that trust." And as we go forward, we're going to see a really interesting dynamic between Darkstar and Black Widow. But Johnny Blaze is not happy about it. He says, "Swell, the team for the common man now even keeps secrets from itself. Maybe you were right, Ivan. Maybe the champions are a bust." And Ivan says
and then
nothing.
we have my favorite caption box. And it closes out the issue. Ivan Petrovich says nothing, but his eyes are hooded by a mask. It will take years to draw away. The trip back to Los Angeles is made in silence.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. It's good stuff.
Good melodrama, man. It doesn't get better than that.
Yep. No, I love it. And so in our next episode, as we said, we'll come back to you to begin with Champions number 11, which shows the debut. It introduces the pulse-pounding pencils of John Byrne. And that signals a new sort of start. These last issues of the Champions with Byrne are terrific.
That's right.
Say last issues. I mean, there are 7 more issues of the Champions, plus all the connected issues that we're going to cover of other titles.
That's right. And not only brings John Byrne into the series, we will see Black Goliath make his debut with the Champions, but also Hawkeye. Wonder if there'll be any sparks between him and Black Widow, and perhaps most surprisingly, the Two Gun Kid.
Yeah, I'm happy to just be able to talk about the Two Gun Kid. Because that bromance between Hawkeye and the Two Gun Kid was like one of the best things about this era of Marvel.
I agree.
Yep.
Sorry about that, man. We both forgot to mute our phones today.
Yeah, that's it's all good. It's all good. I mean, this is how people know that we're doing this out of love more than anything.
Exactly. But speaking of doing this out of love, if you'd like to support our little love affair with 1970s, 1980s Marvel Comics, go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com, click on Defenders Dialogue, and there you can find all sorts of merchandise. You can find T-shirts, mugs, bumper stickers, mouse pads, pins. You can let people know that you make yours Marvel just like we do.
Exactly. And I think I should say, Brian, I'd like people to know that we're not getting a penny out of that.
No.
That those products, the tchotchkes and the Project Entertainment Network, what do you call? I can't even think today. But in any case, that money goes to support the network so that they can continue to bring you fine entertainment.
That's right.
Like Defenders Dialogue. Watch for our next survey so you can vote on Twitter as you help us decide what nonsense for us to cover next.
That's right. And until then, Chris, what is it you always say about this time?
Brian, until then, I say, Excelsior, true believers.
We'll see you next week, folks, with Champions issue 11.
You're listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to. Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything moist. You gotta roll that out.
See, it makes me do weird things. I don't like it.
God damn it.
I'd
be going down on myself?
Shit. Hey guys, it's Bill,
Mick,
Maya.
and Junior
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
Check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows.
Three guys with beards.
Jim Moore,
Jonathan Maybar and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast Ig-On.
Brian Keene of The Horror Show, Chuck Buda, and Armand Rosamilia of The Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban sick of ink stains.
Biz Ung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.